Alrighty folks, welcome back to the channel. My name is Botox Games. Today we have a juicy new Switch 2 rumor for us to discuss and dissect, as we have a user over on Family Boards who seemingly has some information on the initial shipment for the Switch 2, and it looks like if this is true, Nintendo is planning an absolutely massive launch for this console, roughly 2.5 times the amount of units available at launch versus the Switch back in March of 2017, which if true, is absolutely crazy. Let's talk about it. Alrighty, folks, welcome back to the channel. It's been a couple of weeks now since I last talked about the Switch 2 after it wasn't announced in, late October, early November. I was just kind of burnt out, didn't want to talk about it anymore. I was taking my L quietly over there. But, we have a new interesting rumor today about the potential big launch for this system coming from a user over on Family Boards, Ninspider. And it actually lines up with what we had heard back in, I want to say, May or June from Furukawa about how they plan to combat scalpers when it comes to this device. I mean, this is something that happens with every new generation of hardware. Even like the Wii U, when that launched, like it was not easy to find it that first month. For other consoles, though, it takes a little bit longer. I know for the Switch, it was really hard to find a Switch in stores until that Christmas. And Furukawa has made some comments about, how they want to kind of combat scalpers and have an ample supply at launch for the Switch 2. Well, we have a new post from Ninspider over on Family Boards. Now, I believe I've talked about Ninspider in the past, but if not, I want to catch you all up here. So Ninspider is actually... This is a weird user. They don't really post that often. Every once in a while, every few months, they'll come in and say something that, leaves everybody speechless. So back in September, they posted a sketch of the Nintendo Switch that they did with the new kind of curved dock, as well as the U-shaped kickstand for the console, which lines up with what we've heard from some factory leaks, but also it lines up with what Nate the Hate has heard. He said this lines up with what he's seen as well. So it seems like they kind of have an idea of what this console actually looks like, the handheld part of it, as well as the dock. But I would say more interestingly, something that I don't think really many people were expecting was back in August, they actually said, I'm looking forward to a direct the same day that Emio releases. Now, that didn't exactly happen. However, I believe the Partner Showcase plus Indie World kind of double presentation they did was the day after or the day before that Emio actually released. So he was very close there. And in general, it seems like Ninspider seems like someone who does have some sort of information, but of course, as always, take everything with a grain of salt. So far, what they've said seems to line up with what other insiders have heard, and of course, that direct thing, I think, is a pretty big piece of information, even though they were off by a day. But I guess if you look at like different regional time differences, like maybe it lined up for Japan or something. But in my opinion, it's pretty close, and it's worth kind of taking a look at here. They showed up today for the first time since September with a new post, and it's just this big string of text, and when you decode it in base 64, it has this to say. Someone on Gaming Leaks and Rumors on Reddit kind of decrypted it for us here. They say, the initial stock quantity has been finalized and the factory will plan production accordingly. I can't disclose the exact number, but for the US market alone, it's roughly 2.5 times the volume from March of 2017. Now, we know that from March 3rd, 2017 to March 31st, 2017, the Switch had shipped 2.74 million consoles. Ninspider here is saying that it's 2.5 times the volume for the US market. So, at the very least, the US we should have a pretty easy time fighting the console here. I would hope so, if it is that much more. Now, we don't know the exact shipment for the Switch in 2017 in just the US, but worldwide it was 2.74 million. And if this is the case, I mean, maybe for certain smaller regions, it won't be quite that big of a multiplier, right? Maybe it won't be that many more, but you imagine for US, major European territories, and especially in Japan, it would all probably be about the same, right? Like, Japan is a bigger market for Nintendo than the US, so you'd have to imagine that the Switch would maybe even be 3 times the amount in Japan for the Switch 2. So this is absolutely incredible information here and incredible news if it is to be believed. Reading from the Reddit post here, roughly 2.5 times the volume worldwide would translate to an initial shipment in the range of 6.5 million to 7 million consoles for its launch period, the 4-week period there. The biggest console launch of all time was PS5. Sony never shared a precise figure, but we know it was slightly more than the PS4's previous record of 2.1 million consoles shipped in just 2 weeks. So if this is true, it should be a massive launch. And like I said, this falls in line with what Furukawa was saying and how they want to combat scalpers and have enough stock ready so that people don't have trouble fighting this thing. However, if it actually is that much more, if we are talking about 6 to 7 million consoles in the first, month or so of this console releasing, that's almost too much to believe. Like, that is a huge jump over the Switch. Now, granted, the Switch was hard to find, and I'm sure Nintendo was a little bit more scared of whether or not the Switch would sell back then, given how much the Wii U failed. So maybe they're going to come out swinging with this thing. Maybe they're going to be really confident here. And if they have a launch lineup that supports it, why not, you know? The Switch is sitting at about 146 million units sold, I believe. So if even a fraction of those people want to upgrade to a Switch 2 immediately, you would want to have millions of this console available at launch. I think if there's 6 to 7 million available at that time, you would really have no issue being able to secure a pre-order for this thing and find one in a store. Maybe some stores will sell out, but for the most part, that sounds like a lot to me, to the point where I really just don't see this thing being sold out ever necessarily, you know, especially if that it is just the first, 4 weeks, first month or so, because then, they'll have subsequent shipments and they'll be able to restock it. I guess it also depends on the launch timing here. If this is all kind of being finalized right now, the initial stock is finalized, you have to wonder when this thing is releasing, man. I know a lot of people are moving ship to Team in November 2025 or even Team 2026. I'm going to remain on the cautious side of things here, but if we're hearing this now, if this is being finalized right now in November of 2024, listen, I don't know how long it takes to actually manufacture these things, but I think we could still see a May release for this console. And then that way, they have the summer months, they kind of restock it as it goes, and then they have an even bigger shipment for the holiday season. If it's 7 million for like November 2025, then I mean, that's fine, that's good. It'll definitely sell out during Christmas that year, especially if it has some good third-party support. I don't expect GTA 6 on this thing, but I think 7 million during November, if it launches then, that'd be, it's a lot more, obviously, and it's good that there'd be that much more, but it'll definitely sell out then. If it's 7 million in May, you probably still see it sell out in most places, but I don't think it'll be hard for like the hardcore enthusiasts to actually get one, if that makes sense. And when you think about it, the Switch 2 is definitely going to eat into the Switch's sales, so maybe 7 million actually isn't that unreasonable when you look at how well the Switch is still selling. Yes, it's selling worse year over year, but like it's still selling millions of units every year. Maybe they're kind of baking that into the Switch 2 numbers where it's like, well, even new users who don't have a Switch yet, they're not going to buy a Switch 1 in 2025. Maybe they'll just go straight to the Switch 2, especially when you look at the pricing here. I mean, it depends on what this thing costs. I know there's a lot of debates on this. I mean, I'm expecting $400. Maybe it'll be $450. I don't think it goes to $500. The Switch OLED is $350 US, and that is the best-selling model of the Switch in the past couple of years ever since it released. It's still selling better than the base model. It's selling better than the Switch Lite, and that's only, $50 cheaper than what we're expecting the Switch 2 to be. Unless you really don't want to fork up that extra $50, and unless there is a Switch OLED price cut, you'd have to imagine anyone buying a Switch OLED would simply just buy the Switch 2. So maybe 7 million from that lens isn't, that unreasonable. It also makes me very excited and it makes me happy that, if true, this definitely shows a sign of confidence in their launch lineup and launch window games. Now, I think pretty much all of us are expecting 3D Mario to be the launch title for this console, but, if Metroid Prime 4 and Pokemon Legends ZA, maybe they're Switch 1 games. I really don't think there will be like a Switch 2 version. They could still release after the Switch 2 comes out, though, and would essentially be system sellers for the Switch 2, because, I mean, we already know Nintendo's going hard on there being backwards compatibility for this thing. So if they want to go hard on marketing the Switch 2 as a backwards compatible machine, you have a 3D Mario at launch, you have Pokemon and Metroid Prime 4 kind of as Switch 1 games that can be played that way. You have other games like maybe a Switch Sports Resort, maybe one of either Animal Crossing or Splatoon. Maybe you have a new Monolith Saw thing. 2025 could be an absolutely stacked year for Nintendo between both of their consoles, and if that's the case, then I just feel like 7 million, that's confidence, man. That is, you are confident in your launch lineup, you are confident in what this console is, and that's nice to see, because, we didn't see that back in, 2016. We saw Nintendo that was clearly a little hesitant to do things. They were obviously scared after the Wii U, so to see them following up the Switch, their most successful console ever, it's nice to see that level of confidence, I guess. And yeah, I know I've been saying this for a few months now, I think going back to around August, but if this number is finalized, if the amount of units they will be shipping in, let's say, the first month is finalized, you have to imagine mass production, mass manufacturing of the Switch 2. It's probably going to begin in January. It could start in December, but I'm just going to assume it'll begin in January. And, as we do here, it really makes you think, if that's the case, if mass manufacturing for this thing is really beginning, mass assembly is beginning in January, when do they announce it? Like I said earlier, I still think there is a very good chance that this console releases in the first half of 2025 in April or May. Probably May at this point, but I think April isn't off the table as well. Back in 2016, we had the Switch reveal trailer kind of showing the proof of concept, but it wasn't until, 2017, until January, that we saw the full launch year lineup. Maybe they just skip that 3-minute trailer this time. Maybe one day in January we get a tweet saying, hey, tune in next week for a major Switch 2 showcase, a major Switch 2 Direct that will show the launch timing, the launch price, the launch games, like, and then it releases in April. I think that's still reasonable. I mean, people always say, like, for hardware, you need to have a really long kind of hype cycle for and all that, and I kind of agree. Like, I definitely think that announcing it a little bit earlier would have been better. I think if it's releasing at that point, it probably would have been better to announce it in October or September. However, announcing it in January and releasing it in April or May could still make sense, especially if, let's say, Metroid Prime 4 is one of the bigger games for it. If Pokemon Legends EA is one of the bigger games for it, because we already know about those games. And 3D Mario, while yes, you want to market a big 3D Mario, you can still market it in 3 months. I mean, you're going to have the Super Bowl to advertise. You're going to have, I mean, it's a Mario game, man. You know, Mario Wonder was the fastest selling Mario game of all time at the time of its release. And that game had, what, 3 months of marketing, I believe. It was announced in June, released in October. So they could totally announce everything about this console in January and release it in April or May. I know people are expecting holiday 2025 at this point, and maybe that is the smarter thing to predict. However, and I know some people will absolutely disagree with me on this, we don't know when GTA 6 is releasing, but if the Switch 2 does not have GTA 6 on it at launch, which I think is very unlikely, right? I think it's very unlikely that this console has GTA 6 on it day and date with the other platforms. You want to get it out earlier. You want to get this thing out before GTA 6. You don't want to release it within a month period of GTA 6. GTA 5 released in September. A lot of people think the Switch 2 will release in September. Red Dead 2 release in October. Maybe the Switch 2 could release in October. If GTA 6 is September and the Switch 2 is November, I think that could work. Or vice versa. If GTA 6 is November and Switch 2 is September, I think that could work. But I think it'd be very foolish for Nintendo to release a new piece of hardware the same month as the biggest game of all time. Especially, you know, you're going into a holiday season where kids are going to be asking for the thing that plays GTA. And yeah, you can totally argue it's different audiences between someone who wants to play 3D Mario versus someone who wants to play GTA. But I would argue it's really not that different, because at the end of the day, we're still talking about someone who's going to make the decision to buy a new console. I think you need to get this thing out before GTA 6. That is my bottom line on this device. But we'll have to wait and see. I hope pre-ordering it is easy. You know, I remember back in 2017, the day after the Switch presentation, I went to GameStop at like 5 in the morning. It was freezing. I was wearing shorts for some reason. I did not dress appropriately, so I was standing in line at that GameStop, and I think I was like 5th in line, 6th in line. I was able to pre-order basically everything except for the Breath of the Wild Master Edition. I was able to get the special edition, but you know, the console, the Pro Controller, all that was easy enough to get. If these numbers are true, I think we shouldn't really have an issue getting this console at launch, at least for, you know, the hardcore people. If you're watching the Switch 2 presentation in January, you have to assume pre-orders go up the next day. If you're actually paying that much attention, you probably shouldn't have an issue. Now, if you walk into a Target the week after release, then maybe you'll run into some issues. But if, you know, you try a little bit harder than usual, I think it'll be relatively easy to get this console, once again, if these numbers are true. But since Furukawa was talking about combating scalpers, I hope they're able to do that and have an ample supply ready. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. What do you think of this rumor? Do you think it is true? Do you think it is possible that the Switch 2 may have roughly 6.5 to 7 million consoles ready to go at launch? Or do you think this is just wishful thinking? As it is with a lot of Switch 2 rumors, it seems a lot of it is just wishful thinking. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Of course, subscribe here for more Nintendo Switch speculation, theories, discussion, all that fun stuff. Follow me on Twitter at BotoxGames, and follow me over on my other channel at @itsamiibo. I'll be posting a review of Dragon Quest III HD2D Remake either today or tomorrow. I'm not quite sure yet. I need to finish that up. But yeah, of course, until then, peace.